the latest war news is actually what I was just doing during the show, and I had just gotten back from when we started having the technical difficulties. It is that PanFam has taken down the last major strategic iHub in Fountain. The iHub on the regional gate system YTAC2 ANO. And that allows us to siege the Keepstar more easily, and then push into Delve.
It's the last constellation, right? Before the beachhead.
The YTAC2 is the system with the regional gate.
Yeah. So that's pretty much all the systems just before that gate. Are you hitting the other threes as well, or are you basically just going to do the stretch for Y2A or no?
Most of the other stuff is handled by Pandemic Horde's standing fleet. This one was a strat up that we just took. Like, Killer B can probably knows more. He just joined.
Hey, Killer.
Hi. What are you guys talking about?
The op just now that I got killed. I lost a mutant just now in the taking the YTAC2 iHub and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Y2 iHub came out like an hour ago or something like that, and we formed for it. The goons formed for it, then we've had too many people, so goons didn't fight us with their initial two. Like, first, Init formed and goons formed 2 mutant fleets, but we had too many dudes and we formed carriers and shit. So they went to go to period bases and do something over there with the mutants and the both the mutant fleets from Init and goons. And so we decided to take the fleet into Delve, our fleets, and start shooting one of the jump gates that they always use to get to ZXB.
It's the one that has 1 DQ on the other side. 5 taxi.
Yeah, so we decided to hit that to draw them back, make them run back, basically. And they did that, and they also formed a Baltic fleet, and then they formed supers and 1 DQ of their own. Yeah, obviously, as soon as this stopped, we just bailed out, but
my client disconnected, and when I reconnected, I was on grid with a bunch of supers and didn't last much longer.
Your mistake was logging back in. I like that. You shouldn't have done that. You should have talked to UFC and asked them, because obviously when you DC and it's all, usually in these kind of scenarios you should never log back in. When you DC, you just wait a couple hours to go back later.
Yeah, I have a replacement ship, so not too much of a loss.
But yeah, it's just now that we relocated with PanFam to ITEC-C and Fountain, which puts us in direct range of ITEC-2, I think you're going to see a lot more of these shenanigans over the next 10-14 days until we're done clearing up Fountain, because it's always a good opportunity for content. Also, we can be very disruptive to goons. Every time they take fleets over to period bases and queries, we can just form a quick fleet, go hit that jump gate in 5 taxi. They will most likely always form up to defend that because it is very important strategically. So yeah, puts us in a nice spot where we can sort of force a reaction and get something out of it.
Yeah, literally, you've reached the beachhead, right? That's almost like what you're doing. And all of that fighting is going to be ongoing until you actually breach into Delve proper, right?
Yeah, I mean, that would assume that we're going to try to breach in through ZXB YTEC2, which is still something I'm not entirely sure is the smartest play to do. So we'll see, because that's just the same situation we were in when people, like about a month and a half ago, we were discussing how we should enter Fountain, and there was some people that suggested we should go J5A, which it doesn't really work. You can't enter a region through a gate like that, because the enemy can always lock you out. Period. So
I think you said something on the other show you were on. You basically said that it's not viable to just try to enter through one of the entrance points, right? So you should, of course, officially say, that you think this is a bad idea because you will be potentially probing other strategic entry points, and then eventually we're going to see which one is actually going to break and get breached, right?
Yeah, I don't really do shots. Like, I don't Like if I don't want to say anything in public, I just don't say anything on a topic. So it's just my honest opinion from my current point of view. I think it'd be a bad idea to go through ZXB Whitetech 2, but obviously that might change depending on whatever else happens, right? So it's impossible to say until it happens.
Yeah, and you're still going to probe it, right? So you're still going to be active on that gate to see if it's a viable gate.
Why? No, I don't know, not really. Like probing it, yeah, I mean, it sounds cool, but we know, like, we don't need to probe it. We know what response we get when we try to go there. Like, we just saw it. They form supers and titans and drop them. That's exactly what we would do, and that's exactly what they should do. Because in Delve, they have capital superiority, in Fountain, we do.
So how long would
regular
you guess
caps, anyways,
that it's going to take for you to actually reach Delve proper? Get through?
Not long. A month.
I love the way you say that. That's so funny because when
2 weeks until we're done, like 14th. So our deadline on cleaning up Fountain is 23rd. So being well, that's actually 1 week or now 1.5 weeks from now. So done with Fountain on the weekend of the 23rd. Looking at redeploying the week after that, so probably the 30th. Fully operational at probably sometime midweek, so like 3rd of September, something like that. So it's more like 3 weeks, not a month, but yeah, probably something around that.
So everything is just a little bit faster than the schedule, right?
I mean, right now, the only thing that was faster than the schedule was Fountain, actually getting to the cleanup stage of Fountain. But the Fountain cleanup is going right on schedule. We drew up a new schedule when we realized that Fountain was done a month into the war. And ever since we drew up that new schedule, that's been going fine.
Hey, really?
So I'm liking what's happening at the moment anyways. It's just so fun being in direct range of Y2 because we can just do so much shenanigans, force reactions and see what they do and all that kind of stuff. Get kills, get fights.
You guys are starting to see all the good content.
Grind a bunch of structures in the meantime,
All right, you a bit quiet there, Vily.
I was just saying the kill is stealing all the fun content.
That's his job, isn't it?
When does the South get hot?
Once we begin phase 3.
It will get hot. Yeah, exactly. It's just a matter of time.
Back, thanks, Spod, for bringing us back up. Okay, so
Is it me lagging or is Matterall cutting out?
It's Matterall.
Yeah, Matterall has been having technical issues today.
I think Matterall's not going to be able to join us for the rest of the time. He's having too much trouble with his internet. Got kids playing Fortnite and people streaming in the house other than him, unfortunately. What's been going on there? So I have to admit I was not listening the last 5 minutes because I was trying to fix my fan because I'm melting.
All right, well, welcome to Talking in Stations. Today we're just talking. If you haven't heard, Fountain's on the verge of falling over. Killer B was talking about that earlier. Just enjoying the new nice jump range and saying how it makes things a lot easier to engage in content, get to Delve. Obviously, fights are now starting to take place in Delve, and obviously the Western Front forces are kind of enjoying getting back to shooting ships instead of structures, which is great because on the Eastern Front, we were definitely getting tired of shooting ships, and we're looking forward to shooting some structures for a change. So it's really good we get to alternate these things a little bit and, change the pace. Don't you agree, Killer B?
Yes.
Exactly.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, with the new I can't remember what I was going to say. not as good at this. I'm not as good at this as Matterall. So how are you guys feeling about the end of the 3v3 Slicer tournament? Everybody got the rewards today. How do you feel that went?
I didn't hear it went that well, to be honest. I've seen some people on the top 100 board with like literally a handful of wins. It seems it wasn't that popular, this one.
Yeah, I definitely saw the same. I was just checking my rewards today. I think I got top 50 with 6 wins, and obviously we're really only able to play the first day, and after that, I think we waited 2.5 hours in queue that first night, and then that pretty much killed it for a lot of people.
Yeah, that sounded what Cable was saying, that he's even on the first couple of days he had really long waits.
Yeah, well, I know the second and third and fourth days that you could still get matches if you're willing to wait an hour and a half, but certainly that doesn't bode well, I think, for the future of the Proving Grounds in that kind of meta. Why do you think it is that that event went so differently than the other ones?
It's just way too niche. Imperial Navy Slicers, it's a ship. It's just too restrictive, and I know like it's not a lot of skill to train into them, but if you don't like lasers, you don't like lasers, and that's you out.
Yeah, I mean that's fair.
I'm looking forward to the next one, the Corvette one. Is that the next one?
I think it's the 2v2 battlecruisers next.
I've not heard anything
Anybody
about
got the schedule
2v2
offhand?
battlecruisers.
Yeah, because event 5 is the 5v5 Corvettes, and event 4 is the 2v2 battlecruisers, right?
Let's have a look.
I'm interested in the battlecruiser one.
Yeah, I don't know how the battlecruiser one's going to go, right? Because the higher up you go in terms of ship class, the higher your skill point average has to be to really compete, right? So I know the character I've been competing in these events with is like a 50 million SP character, but he doesn't have all the skills to really, shift around the meta in terms of the battlecruisers. He's only got like Calente battlecruiser and Minmatar battlecruiser really skilled. So if the meta is much more Caldari or Amar focused, I really can't compete in a way, right? And I think we're probably going to see that a little bit be a problem where, people don't have the skill points to really feel like they compete, so they just don't compete at all. And as well, I think the fact that the battlecruisers are significantly more expensive than any of the other formats might push a lot of people out as well.
Struggling to find anything on, because I know there was a calendar published, but it was published without the list of what the ships will be in each one. I need to stop wiggling my windows around. So, actually, speaking of Cable, everyone's favourite Proving Grounds champion, what's going to happen now that he's got... now that he's got the... He's won twice, so what happens? Where you can't get double the skins, because it's like it's a universal skin, isn't it?
Well, I believe the top 3 players combined, or from each of the events, receive kind of points towards a final tally at the end of all of the Proving Ground events, which then goes towards winning like something from CCP and some store credit and some other stuff. And I think he's probably working towards that. To a degree, I think he's probably also just competing on pride and glory and all the rest. Cable doesn't really need the ISK. It's more about just the entertainment value of winning for him, I think. So certainly it's not like he needs to win these things for any real reason. It's just he enjoys playing the game, and he's got lots of time to do so, and he's able to do it, and certainly when he was able to invest massive sums of ISK in it, it gave him a pretty good competitive advantage. And now that he's not, it'll be much more about time investment. I think he's probably got the ability and skill to stay near the top, if not maintain that spot. There's a lot of people who are busy with the war right now who might otherwise try and compete with him, but certainly of the people involved in the proving grounds really heavily right now, I think he's going to maintain a good shot at staying near the top, no matter how it goes at this point.
Yeah, I didn't realise that. So the next one, 2v2 battle cruisers, from the 21st to the 25th of this month, August. You can use pretty much any Tech 1 battle cruiser, but you're limited to Tech 2 at most guns, and you're not allowed... Is it not allowed pirate implants at all, or is it just you're only allowed
Correct.
like the
the
05 kind
so
of things?
no more bling powers on proving ground events.
Is that going to be true of all of them going forwards?
I don't know what the answer is on that, but I know that the devs that are working on this are kind of playing it by ear. They're trying to iterate as quickly as possible and trying to build the proving ground scene kind of from the ground up, and they're adjusting based on the feedback they get. So if you see something you don't like it, make sure you speak out kind of publicly about it and let them know, and they'll try and take that feedback into consideration. Obviously, the slicers and how that went is not ideal, but you know, there's no success without failure, right? So if you're gonna succeed at something, you're probably gonna have to try it a few times and fail first. So they're trying different things in different ways and seeing how it goes. So next event 4 is going to be the 2v2 battle cruisers, as it's on the screen there, with all the T1 battle cruisers, including the attack battle cruisers, with only T2 mods and no implants aside from like genos. And then you've got the 5v5 Corvettes, which will be very memey, but also probably pretty interesting. I'm kind of curious to see how the meta will evolve around that, if it's going to be Velvet or online, or there's a couple different ways it could go, obviously. And then the Caldari Union Day 2v2 Faction Frigate Interceptor Destroyer, which has got all kinds of interesting possibilities on how that'll go. If it'll be, Corax is online, or if, the Hook Bills, or there's a couple different ways that could go, and I'm kind of curious to see it.
You said yourself that this is pretty much learning while doing, right? Have you guys in the CSM been privy to any stats? Have you crunched numbers with the devs on where to move these things and where to iterate, or are you still waiting for an actual kind of session or discussion?
Well, I can't say details specifically, but what I can say is that they've already iterated once and removed the faction modules and implants problem. So I think it's pretty obvious that they're iterating and evaluating and moving forward as quick as they can.
Well, I suppose you can call it wallet worrying, is a bit of a pain in the butt. When somebody loses such a big ship, like that makes good news. You can send that out to all of the media, or you can get that all
I mean, there's truth to that, but it's also important to remember that when that happens, you also have the situation where for every time that Wallet Warrior loses, there's 100 times he wins, and all of those people feel like they were locked out of fun competition, right? I know the first time I came up against Cable with my Caracals versus his, and we started shooting them, and I'm like, oh, they're Nirvana. There's no, because like you can tell by the amount of damage your missiles are doing, right? That it's like this is doing like 1% per hit. You're like, okay, we're not going to win this, and like you have no ability to really compete, right? And that's a real turnoff to a lot of people. It's just being entirely outcompeted, not by skill or anything like that, but just entirely by ISK, especially because a lot of people don't feel like they should have to spend that kind of money on the game. And it's just, it's a positive change, I think, and from what I've seen, 90+%
with that as a maybe forever thing, maybe not. Yeah,
as I said, I'm sure that they're going to continue to iterate, right? And so maybe 15 events down the line, they do a bling event with pirate battleships and implants and all the rest, and who knows what that turns into. But if I had to guess, they're going to closely manage the fitting restrictions from kind of this point on, having seen how it affected some of the first events. And I mean, especially if you look at the Destroyer free-for-all, I think that was much more well-received than the 2v2 cruisers, because even during this Destroyer free-for-all, while you could bling, the ability to bling was so greatly diminished and so hard to impact. It did impact the match, but it was like a 10 or 20% bump versus in the 2v2s where it would become an unassailable kind of mountain of advantage.
Be quite a spicy one to have a reverse thing where you can't enter unless you've got faction modules. The High Rollers Club.
Yeah, I don't think they would go for that all that much, really. These are not designed to be, something for, the elite of elite players to just throw money into. It just doesn't work that way, I guess. Or I just don't think that's what the majority of people want. And especially if every match you're losing $1 billion ISK or something, there's not going to be many people involved or interested in that.
True.
Did you guys touch on what happened to CVA in the last 2 days or so with the Red Alliance falling apart and all that?
Yes, we did. We talked on it for about an hour.
We talked about that
Yesterday, yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun.
I'm still trying to get my head
watch.
wrapped around that one.
I can give you the rundown if you like.
Sure, I'm just kind of curious if anybody can actually explain it in a cognizant kind of way or a simple way for a layman.
So essentially, do you want to go on? Or
in the breakaway coalition, that's most of the former Pravi alliances. There was a dispute between the various alliance leaders, and one of them, who owned their staging Fortizar, ended up having a fallout with the others and leaving the coalition. And there were some issues with docking access for everyone else in that Fortizar.
I think the docking access thing initially was a genuine mistake, but then the poo-poo started flying, as such things do in those kind of situations, and everyone went from best buddies to I hate your guts in about the space of half an hour. And so now Two Maidens, One Chalice is no longer a member of Red Alert, and they'll be going their own way, and Red Alert is, I believe, working on going to Great Wildlands, because there's...
Yeah, Great Wildlands, where they have apparently some friends who are ex-Pravi, is what was said yesterday.
That's what I've heard as well. They've got buddies out there, and they're hoping to, at least for the time being, try and live the NRDS life somewhere else.
No, it's good for them. I've heard some rumors that some of them plan to start resettling in Great Wildlands or Scalding Pass or something like that, so I'm kind of curious as to how that's all going to go.
Well, I can tell you the Wildlands plan is the true one.
Oh, really? They are actually planning to go kind of Great Wildlands?
Yep.
And it looked like that was one of the reasons why the leader of Two Maidens, One Chalice had a falling out with the others, because he wasn't a fan of resettling there.
Well, that was the spicy thing in that the Team Up guy, General, alluded in his public letter, can you call it, that he'd made some kind of deal with RC potentially to remain in Providence. In what capacity, I don't know. But there was some suggestion of some kind of deal. I think the true split there, from my opinion, was obviously the Two Maidens guys were happy to go live in Providence and try and rebuild, and the other guys were very much, screw Providence, we don't want to be RC's cow to milk for content. I think that's the fundamental split there.
Yeah, so Great Wildlands is all NPC sob, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So living there is quite different from living in a sob region. I'm kind of curious as to how that's going to work when you don't really have control of your anomalies or routing sites or anything like that. It's usually just like a kind of a pass or through region. It's an NPC region with, no real pirate faction agents or anything like that. The usual draws to NPC space.
Oh yeah, there isn't a whole lot in the way of stations there, is there?
Yeah, I think there might be 3 stations in the entire region or something like that.
Is there 3? Is there 2? I know there's EO2 and MTech M. Oh yeah,
I'm
there is a
seeing
third
one
one,
more. Yep.
MTech D. Yeah, EO2 used to be a pretty big station over the course of EVE's history at different times, and certainly MTech M has been as well. But the thing is, there's no real resources in a place like Great Wildland. You know, what are they gonna kind of give their members to do? I guess.
What are the moons like in there?
There is some decent moons. That's true. That's definitely true.
TrueSec's not terrible.
Well, it's TrueSec belt ratting, not TrueSec anomaly ratting, right?
Very true. The thing I always find hard with NPC regions is it's unless you want to sit and spend the next 4 hours digging through a killbot, it's very difficult to find out who lives there and where in there they live.
Yeah.
You can't just use the old Sov map and see, oh, he lives there, he lives there.
So
Yeah,
right now we have the mighty victor of the 3v6 Slicer event joining us, Cable Utsa. How you doing, Cable?
Good. What an intro.
Feeling pumped after another glorious Proving Grounds win?
Not really, considering it was pretty horrible.
Pretty free, yeah.
Pretty much given with effectively no one actually wanting to play in it.
Yeah, well, there's definitely some truth to that. I think of the first day you were at 15 wins, and I was like, okay, I can catch up to that pretty easily. And then after waiting 2.5 hours in queue for a match that same night, I was like, okay, I guess I'm not going to be catching him. Looks like.
Exactly. We were like, Yumi and I were both like, if anyone gets to like 13, then we'll start queuing. But then anything less than that, we're like, nah.
Well, I mean, we had kind of discussed like rolling up like 20 or 30 alts and like just suiciding slicers into each other to do matches, but it was like
contemplating collusion.
Contemplating, but we didn't do it. We were like, it's not really worth it. Maybe on this is Eve. Yeah, I know we considered it, but it's like, what's the, just winning the 3v6 Icer event doesn't actually give you anything special compared to, so there was no real incentive to it. And once we had our 5 or
I keep getting a bigger and bigger lead on the overall thing. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, I think at this point it's pretty safe to say you've either got her locked up or pretty close to. So
I mean, I think Yumi's my biggest competitor because he's gotten second in all the events, and then we have the shared first place in the Slicer event here. And I think I'm like 120 ahead of him in overall wins, or something like that. So
okay.
like, and then the nearest person after that is like 200 or something, and it just keeps going up.
What is the overall prize for the Proving Grounds?
Top 10 gets like 2,000 plex. Top 5 also gets a $50 voucher to the Eve merch store. Woo! And then top 3 also gets a free, those 3D models that they made.
Right. Yeah.
You essentially get to pick one. And
then,
nice. And then, from what I understand, the top person is going to be part of an Eve scope video or something like that. So, woo!
What are you going to say in the video?
He hasn't won it yet, so don't get him thinking.
I mean, I might suddenly get hit by a bus, and
he could still get you millenniumed, so you never know here.
Nah, I'll be fine. Now that there's no shiny, there's not going to. A lot less people have a massive incentive to hunt, like specifically queue to counter or whatever else. Now that there's fitting restrictions in play.
Yeah, no, I looked over your kind of fittings that you were using during the Slicer event. I thought it was pretty reasonable. It wasn't anything crazy, but it was
like 150
nice balance.
million or something, 160 million, I think it was.
Yeah,
and it was really strong. Like, it was super strong.
Well, the thing is, without like the implants, it's just like they're the big cost, but also this massive.
What implants though?
Advantage. Well, you weren't using implants, is my comment. Like, during the 2v2s, obviously you were, right, and it provided a huge advantage. So.
Lana's best implant.
Or Asclepians in the right situation.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, depending. flying maulers or shield. 180 win in the 2v2s total. And that was only possible because I was using Nirvanas. Because I could survive like 2 full clips from like Caracals, for instance, in the stabber. It was really, really dumb. So all I had to do was always approach
are
F1.
really, really strong in that kind of a situation when nobody else has got them. So
exactly, because Nirvanas are super balanced and whatnot. Super duper
I don't think they're any less balanced than amulets are, if you consider it that kind of way.
I definitely think they are. Because CCP specifically talked about, like, we need to, sort out, first of all, they need to sort out shield regen, passive regen, and they haven't done that. And then they needed to sort out shield EHP overall, and they haven't done that.
Well, the issue with shield EHP is that shield EHP is generally lower, right? Because large shield extenders are only equivalent to half of 1600 millimeter plates.
Well, on some ships, sure, but for instance, as you would know, on Supers and Titans, there's a very big difference between armor tanking and shield tanking.
Oh, absolutely.
Armor is going to be significantly weaker. I mean, we're at the point where if you're got Nirvanas in, an Erebus is a better shield tanker than it is an armor tanker.
Not really, no. We went over all of the fits and all the possible ways to do it, etc. The fact that armor has a larger power grade, is able to double tank with reps. There's a ton of advantages that armor has that shield doesn't, and there's some advantages that shield has that armor doesn't.
Shield gets overall DPS. Because
DPS and like DPS EHP, right? Like that's kind of the general shield advantage.
DPS, yeah.
Where armor has a much higher abilities with application, with dual tanking, with passive resist. Like there's to a degree, it's much closer to where it should be. I'm not going to necessarily say that it's perfectly balanced, but I think it's a lot closer to where it should have been for a long time, right? Because both sides have different strengths and different weaknesses. The fact you can nude out a shield super and it dies in fucking 3 seconds is definitely a significant trade-off, let's say.
I can totally agree to that. However, on a block level, because, those fights aren't going to happen without tie-dye, you have some much different effects kicking in where, you get to the point where literally Doomsdays matter, and at that point, EHP matters, nothing else.
Well, in those kind of block fights as well, it's important to remember that things like Newt bursts and, Bosun and Lance drains can be exactly the same.
In tie-dye?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
They only also work within 250 kilometers. So
200 kilometers, right? Yeah.
200 kilometers, sorry, even less.
But it's important to remember that a fight like ULX never could have happened if the opposing side would have not dropped all their caps first, because we had to ensure we hit that 200 kilometers range. Otherwise, we couldn't take the fight, period.
Sure.
Like, as I say, there's give and take. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I definitely think it's closer to where it should be than it was historically before Nirvanas existed, where shield were basically a pipe dream to a degree.
Isn't there still the issue of sorry, what's it called? Passive regen in tie-dye being an issue? Pretty sure.
Not that I'm tracking. No, passive regen works exactly the same as it does in regular time. There's a meme, I think, from like 10 years ago where somebody was shooting a wyvern, and it was like shield regen repping them. But as far as I'm tracking, that's been fixed for many, many years.
Pretty sure that it's still an issue. That the whole in tie-dye that the shield regen doesn't actually like it keeps going in real time.
I'm not tracking that as an actual issue. So I mean, as far as I'm tracking that's a myth from a decade ago. Yeah.
Just to be sure, because if it still is, then you can see that's a.
Oh,
for
absolutely.
Instance, if you have a Komodo.
Yeah, which I do, and I'm sure you've had a few in your hangar as well at different points.
I have one
it's
right now.
well, exactly.
Want to buy it?
No, I don't. But even a Komodo now is not as strong as it has been traditionally.
Oh, of course not.
With the HP and resist nerfs, they're definitely.
But I mean, it's still not, by far the tankiest one. Like by a long shot, it's still tanky.
You can get it to like 110, I think now, versus like 80 for a Moloch.
If you go with A types, yeah.
Yeah, well, I
Is
mean,
that including the high grade
It's,
implants?
yeah, of
1,
course.
122. 122.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Unheated.
But also in a
Unheated.
situation where, yeah. But that's also, of course, in a situation where you can be instant nuded out and it means nothing. So
I feel like that's unlikely in a brawl where you would decide to actually have a Komodo on the grid
well,
in the first
not really,
place.
right? If you put 100 dreads down and every one of them hits you with a capital newt in the
But
span
in
of a
max
few
tie-dye,
seconds,
the guns barely work.
that's not been the case for max tie-dye dread fights for the last while.
I'd assume
I'm not
you
even sure if
also
there's
have
been
a
any
ton.
dread fights where
I
that's
assume
happened
you'd
since
also
BR.
have a ton of faxes there. Give it caps.
Well,
Shutting them
it's
off
important to
is gonna be
remember
hard.
that capital energy transfer is diminishing returns, just like capital shield transfer, right? So,
Do they?
oh, yep.
I didn't actually know that. Fair
Yeah, I
play.
remembered when that was introduced. I mean, if you have 150 facts, and there's 300 dreads, then that's a different problem altogether, right? But
Yeah, because that's just a lot,
well,
Gonna be in
you're just
trouble
gonna die
regardless.
in very short order regardless. So
I'd assume that there wouldn't be 100 faxes without 100 other titans as well. At
Well,
least to an extent.
the mechanics of every Titan and Super Cap battle are different, so it's hard to describe
Oh, sure.
how these situations will go. But yeah, I'm I don't know. I'm kind of like happy for you. Like seeing that you are keep winning these proving grounds. I'm like, okay, well, he's putting the effort in. Um, there's definitely no doubt about that one.
This is what happens when you're quarantined plus being unemployed, sitting on my ass.
Well, I
You
mean,
get
when I
to-
saw you had like 16 wins the first day of the Slicer event, before I'd even gotten off work, I'm like, oh yeah, well, he's going ham. And
Well, I
obviously,
mean,
you got a crew of people to work with that are pretty capable. So.
It wasn't even that. Like, it was literally Yumi Iron and like one. We got to play with Jarek and Satonia. And like Satonia had to leave, and then Jarek took over. But it was like super weird because played for like, what was it, like the first hour? It was like 15-minute queue, 15-minute queue, 15-minute queue, and then the next couple hours it was like 5-10 minutes, and then like when you got to like just after EU Prime, it just died. It turned into like sitting for 25 minutes. Like, screw that. We're not gonna wait that much time. And since then it was like, I mean, you probably saw the Zkill links where you could see that like no matches had been done since like 2:00 in the morning.
Well, that was us waiting for the matches. To, like the 2.5 hour
Yeah.
image was literally my queue, and so we were like,
horrible. And we were just like, yep, that's kind of what we predicted to happen here.
I don't think anybody really predicted that level of like on the first night that it would just fall apart, because like we were starting getting into our matches in U.S. time zone, and we're like, all right, we'll just gotta wait for the U.S. guys to log in. Then we waited in like 30 minutes, and then 45 minutes. Like, how long have we been waiting? Then it's like an hour and a half, and then we're like, holy cow! And then 2 hours, and you're like, is something wrong? And then you just keep waiting, and then 2.5 hours in, we finally got a match, and we're like, holy cow! And then obviously we didn't do any more because nobody's interested in that kind of a wait for a match.
It was a bit telling
Yeah,
that some people made it onto the leaderboard with 3 wins. I guess it's a little bit low there.
I actually played with a group of guys. Literally made an op in their wormhole corp, and it's like everyone has to get 4 wins because that means they're all guaranteed to be in the top 100. So everyone would get the free SP and the 100 million and so on and so forth. So we actually took it was like Sunday, and I played with like 2 different alts to support, like fill in slots, and someone couldn't play or whatever, had to go or and we essentially just pushed like 15 guys up to the top 100. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, when I heard how quiet it is, even though I'm probably the worst PvPer here, I was tempted just to throw a few attempts at it just to get on the board.
I can give you a prediction though. It's going to be the exact same thing with the chip 5v5s.
I disagree. I think the 2v2 battle cruisers is going to be very unpopular, and I think the 5v5 noob chips.
I think that's going to be lit as fuck.
I think the skill point requirements combined with the ISK cost per match is going to really drive down the attendance
Isn't
a lot, or the
but
participation.
it's. I mean, it's going to be slightly more than the T2 cruiser, the T1 cruisers. It's not going to be that
No,
much
the
more.
T1 cruisers were like 15 mil a match if you wanted to really do it cheap. Like a single T1 battle cruiser is like 70
very few
mil
people did
per
that,
hull,
though.
right? Like you're talking 100 million ISK
Yeah, I
per
guess.
person per match, right? So that's 200 mil, and if you lose, you
Gotta
know,
stop being poor, you know.
well, it's important to remember that 200 million ISK is a lot of money to the average, you know, player in EVE Online, right? And even if you're, you know, in a good environment where you're making 50 million ISK an hour, that's almost 4 hours of work per match, right? That I don't think there's a large quantity of people that can afford that.
Assuming
Yeah,
you
but
lose.
obviously,
And assuming you pay for both, of course. But yeah.
Right, but then think about it like, you know, are people going to be willing to lose 10, 15, 20 times? You know, that's a lot of money for people. And especially when you factor in that, you know, if people don't have basically the perfect level of skill points to fly these ships, you know, like Battlecruiser 5 and the Tech 2 guns, etc., a lot of people are going to be like, nah, I'm not going to do that, right? Nobody wants to try and compete against, you know, Tech 2, you know, Brodixes or Taloses or whatever else the meta is going to be with like their Tech 1 Ferox. Like they know they're going to lose, and then that ISK requirement just hits that much harder.
Cruisers is going to be the interesting one, but it is price gated.
Yeah, I think the noob ships, like the ships are basically free, right? You're talking 3 million ISK to go. Yeah, the 5 per people are definitely harder to get than 2 or 3, but you know, once you're doing it with noob ships, anybody can do that with their buddies, basically any time in any location, right? So, to me, I definitely feel like that has more accessibility than the other one.
It's less gated because the numbers, as you all agree, obviously. But I think that people will very, very, very rapidly come bored of flying noob ships because you don't play this game to fly a noob ship, right? It's a very hard, limited ship, and it's actually really hard to fit. Noob ships have garbage fitting available. Like, it's actually terrible. So, like, it's going to be very stale in how you can actually fit your ship. There's no, like, strategy in it. It's literally just going to be get as much range DPS as you can on everyone, and then hope that you can kill the other guys faster. And then, like, there's not going to be any real amounts of meta in it. And again, people are not going to necessarily really be happy about flying noob ships. It's not really that interesting.
Can I jump in here, Cable? I want to ask you a question. I'm not sure you can hear me.
Sure. Also, there's a raid.
Connection problems. Great, awesome. Ask you a question because I think, and I'm glad the raid came because now more people can hear this.
Oh boy, put me on the spot.
Yeah, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Yikes.
Because the first time we had this tournament, very popular. Second time, pretty popular. Third time, not so popular. I'm wondering if you broke it. Because
wow, way to put it on me.
Yeah. Because no, other people have said, like, hey, this is EVE. You got to win at all costs, whether you're, you know, skirting the edges of what's ethical or just playing your heart out. Colluding or whatever is part of the game. But didn't that break the confidence of players to play this feature? Do you think it's a factor?
I definitely think it could obviously have a factor. I think the drama surrounding the whole collusion and whatnot, and people's issue with me paying a lot of ISK to fly obscenely expensive T1 cruisers and so on to get a massive benefit.
Yeah,
obviously is going to have a impact. I don't believe it would be like the single factor that just tipped it over and gone like, yep, no one wants to play it anymore. I actually think and hope that it's actually a case of players not agreeing with the concept of instance PvP. That is my hope that that's the case. I could be wrong, and it could just be entirely my fault, or me and a couple of the guys. But I think that if that's the case, then that's really a showing of players that, not to say it rudely, but really lack a will to fight, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. To compete.
Yeah, and
less than
I mean,
fight.
if you're gonna lay down and give up because someone played within the rules, yes, the rules are bad, and I mean, I've said that a plethora of
Well,
times.
but
it should have been in place, but that doesn't change that I'm there to win, right?
yeah, I guess I'm interested in the larger point of people say like, hey man, win at all costs. This is EVE Online. You just win however you can. There is no honor to how you win. And this has come up before because we've talked to someone like Win Spirits who founded the fraternity, right? A group that came over, or not came over, but was a Chinese group. And one of the things he made an interesting point. He said, the players in China are excellent players, but they're different. They are like finely tuned professional athletes. And the Western players on Tranquility are like warriors. They're like savage warriors that will win at all costs and, you know, club your family as well as club you, but they're going to win
at any cost.
At any cost. But over here in China, they kind of have like more of an honor system, we'll put it that way, where they're playing their best sportsmanship game. And I think that's a larger point about EVE Online. And you can see here, this may be an example of what happens when you are a savage winner like you are, using a lot of money to win and using a lot of tricks and, again, skirting the ethics of the rules. But you did win.
I would say the whole statement of skirting the ethics of the rules is not really fair because...
Well, the idea is you go into gladiator combat. The idea isn't that you pay off a gladiator to fall over dead in front of you. Like, that's...
I mean, that happens in real life, too.
It didn't happen in Rome. That's right.
No, of course not. But my point is more that, you know, that happens in real life, too. The only difference is that in real life, it's in sports in real life, it's not allowed. No one said that it's not allowed. If CCP had come out and said, you're not allowed to collude or you're not allowed to fly bling, we haven't set up the mechanics yet, but it's not allowed, then obviously we wouldn't have done it. But they didn't, so it's allowed, right?
Right, you know, or they might have even lured it up and said, hey, Caldari Sporting Commission says no colluding. Like, you got to come into this.
Anything, really. That's all they have to do. But they didn't. Therefore, it is allowed. And I would go as far to say that it's misguiding to say that it's skirting the rules even.
Yeah. And we're making an assumption that the integrity of these minor tournaments here is broken in a way that people don't want to participate because they feel like it's already rigged up. Somebody's already sewn it up and won it. And you winning the first 3 or 2 or 3 now.
Yeah, 2 and then like shared first place with Yumi in the third here.
Right. So you basically dominated the first 3. You know, Bob dominated the first Alliance tournaments too, the first 3, and they were later displaced by usurpers, Pandemic Legion, and others. So it's possible not to stay on top, but
sure.
I wonder if that hasn't hurt the confidence of the entity of you know, players basically saying this looks fun, but basically I'm just going to go in there and lose. So why would I do it?
I mean, now that the fitting restrictions and implant restrictions and so on are going to be in place for the next event. I mean, if people are still going to be holding off on playing because they have this feeling that they're going to get cheated or, you know, someone else is going to have a dumb advantage over them and so on.
Right.
I think that then I think it's the players that are at fault if they actually look at it that way, because I mean, CCP can't do more than they've done now, then, right? I mean, yes, you might still have the essence of illusion because there's no way they can really counteract that other than saying this is not allowed.
Right.
But
they don't even know. They don't even know what a problem is until it presents itself. However, you only have one chance to make a first impression, right? You might have a second act.
Totally.
Faction War ran into this problem. It was introduced, kind of cool, kind of broken. People dismissed it, saying, yeah, it's broken, don't play it. Same thing with help me out here, guys. What other systems were introduced in kind of a broken way? And even though they were improved over time, people didn't go back to check on.
Of things that CCP have released of various areas of the game that were released broken, and then it was kind of dismissed by the players, and now it's kind of just left on its own. I mean, just look at NPC Zotios.
Right. That's
the
another one.
ever-ending thing, right? I mean, it was released in a really poor manner. They did some slight modifications to it, but now it's literally a group of, I'd say, 10 people who run them, and that's it.
Right. Yeah, that's, there was a CSM attempt to get more people to run them by basically nerfing you.
Yeah.
To be able to exploit, basically. And I don't mean that in the
the intention was for it to be a fleet combat scenario, right? Where you actually go in with it. You can't actually fight the rats with subcaps.
It's too strong.
You just straight up can't. They will molest you in very bad ways. They will dominate any subcap fleet super easily.
Yeah. So the only way to do it is with capitals.
Dreads, or previously, Initiative did it once with Sniping Raven with a Boosh fleet, which was obviously also a valid tactic because it meant that they just teleported around the grid until eventually the structure died. Or do it with Supers and Titan, and that's essentially what it's been. How to say what it's degraded to.
Yeah. Well, but the point is, it was introduced in a way that was broken or lopsided. People wrote it off, saying it's not worth doing. You can't win it, and if you can, somebody's going to steal it or whatever. And then not many people run it anymore because its reputation is still that it's not worth doing. I wonder if there's a parallel here between. Well, this is funny because you're the common denominator now that I think about it. You ruined Sotios, and now
I essentially ruined everything I touch. Is that what you're getting at now?
Yes, I think. Yeah.
Oh.
All right. Well, we solved this.
Yeah. Cable is ruining Eve single-handedly. God damn.
Yeah, it's not where I wanted to go, but it's where we ended up. No, I'm just kidding. It's interesting to see how behavior is formed by the events in development. But also, I think the most important part of it is not the development of the CCP devs, but the players and how they essentially, destroy their own fun.
Well, and in Cable's defense, this is what players always do. This is pretty much standard behavior.
This is always EVE Online 101.
Especially in EVE, right? If CCP launches something that has flaws, we will abuse them and we will completely break the game. To the point that if they don't actually listen to the small amount of players, well, then eventually it's going to reach some of the big groups, and someone like Goons are going to say, oh, we're going to get in on this and completely mess up the entire game.
Yeah, but I wonder if there's not room here for playing in the spirit of the rules, right? Like there's not some restraint, some civility, some honor code.
Oh my God, you're on e-honor and old school pirates again.
No, make fun of me, but it's a true thing, right? It's in real life. If EVE is supposed to be real, it's got to be real in that way too. It can't just be all the shit that you can do to people. It's also got to be all the things you can restrain yourself from doing.
That's pretty much the rule of the internet, though. It brings out the worst in people because there's no repercussion. The only reason why people actually act to an extent civilized and nicely to each other in real life, to an extent respectfully to each other, is because if they don't, there's a hammer and it'll come for you because that's called the law. And other people's thoughts of you, or like you will actually have real life repercussions. There's no repercussions in the game by, being the nice guy.
Well, and the tragedy is that it's fine that CCP has made a game where they're basically going to do hands off and say, well, everything is allowed because it's a simulation.
Scamming is
But
allowed.
they've not effectively given the player base tools to actually even try to moderate themselves and police each other. It's just not possible.
We need better Concord, right? Like, let's start that movement.
No, but that's the problem. Concord is actually a bit of a mistake. As I jokingly tried to get Vily to bring to the CSM, how about we reverse them so they actually heal you instead of kill the offender, because it doesn't work. And since we do not have effective self-policing options or anything like that, it's just too much hassle to try and do something.
Do the policing, and we can talk about that, because in GTA there's people that just dress up as cops and run around kind of trying to enforce the law.
That's
like,
RP,
it's a whole
more than incentivized, right? The point is that we know that mercenary stuff in EVE works really well, right? The racketeering thing works really well, and if you think about it, police is pretty much just an upscaled version of racketeering, right? It's protecting the wealthy, but we don't have that option right now. It's not efficient.
No,
it's not valid.
It's too bad. We should have that. That's only one part of the equation. The other part of the equation is we don't have a court system. We don't have a court system to weigh you down and to penalize you.
Well, the court system in EVE is a little bit Wild West. The ones with the biggest guns win, right? And this is also how it should be, right? This is why I keep mentioning things like TTT and player-owned structures. If we want to fix high-sec, we should let the players actually do the policing. I'm pretty sure that if the incentive was there to run a proper oligopoly and then actually do the policing to make sure that that it increased profitability for things like the TTT, it would happen. You would basically have Vily.
The what do they call it? The criminal tagging system. What's it called? Crime Watch. I think the Crime Watch system is supposed to be that. Like, you can basically put bounties on each other's heads, and then bounty hunters are supposed to come and want to kill them. I wonder if that's working.
But that system is broken, and it's been broken since day one. Bounty and the whole ganking thing, right?
It's so bad because that's where you can create solo gameplay. There was the game Star Wars Galaxies, where you could be a bounty hunter and on your own time hunt down Jedi and kill them and set them back quite a bit. But you could also make money doing that. And you were self-sufficient in that sense, but it was a profession. You could go and hunt down people. And here, it doesn't seem to work.
But the point is, if CCP wants to make these things, right, they need to sit down and figure out on paper, say, a new concept, and then they need to go to exactly people like Cable and say, okay, this is what we have. How would you break this? How would you abuse this and completely make a mess of all of our dev hours work?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing.
But they never want to do that because they don't trust the player base, which I totally understand.
Well, they don't trust the player base, but they do necessarily. I do think they trust individual players.
Let me get
they do talk to individuals.
Let me get this in here before we move on, because I'll forget. This is an idea. Instead of making a tournament, right? And I don't know how they dressed it up, but to me, it looks very much like an instance tournament. Again, it's supposed to be additive, so I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying, instead of making the instant game hired by NPCs is the kind of thing that puts you in the flavor of EVE Online without making you feel like it's a sectioned off part of the galaxy.
Bounty
so I think
filaments. Bounty filaments would be nice. You activate a filament of specific types and value, and it will basically launch you into the same system as your victim.
Right. That's what I'm talking about.
That would be abused so horrific. but you can see this, right? That the problem is that CCP would have to effectively create a whole new interactivity level in the game just for this specific thing.
I don't care. You know what?
And it goes kind of directly against CCP's methodology that they've kept to, like, the last 17 years of let the players do whatever the hell they want.
No,
And
I'm
leave
tired of
them
that.
alone to an extent.
I
You're
want to
tired
play.
of that. Okay.
I want to play the good guy. I want to play the good guy. Make me.
When has being the good guy ever won, even in real life?
Hey, there's a lot of white knights out there.
But they don't win.
They don't win, but there's a lot of white knights, but they don't win.
I'm just saying. Of the world, like
But there's a fine line between
they need to
emergent.
incentivize.
But there's a fine line between emergent gameplay, right? Things that develop, that should develop and will develop, right? Like the umbrella in Null, which is basically effectively a police force, right? This is something that should happen, but something when you put in features like asset safety, that was not meant to be this method for someone like Olmeca to export all his theft goods, these things, and will tell you this is why it's wrong.
You need to find the fringe case players that they need to talk to.
And especially people that have been basically breaking Eve for a long time and is a little bit bored of it might actually be open to help CCP. Yeah, well, you're a perfect candidate.
Eve a lot.
I would.
I mean, I would love to do it. Don't get me wrong. I would super love to do it.
Well, in the old days,
but I think it's kind of a fairy tale world because it's never going to happen.
Well, I don't know. Maybe they remember that they used to have these people.
Think about the public view of it. Like, if let's say I'm a bad actor and I decide, hey, I can think of a way that I could do this, but I could just tell them about these other things that most people won't think of. So now I can abuse the crap out of it, and but that's one scenario. That's first of all that it could go really bad. Second of all, it would require effectively a new type of CSM in essence, right?
Yeah, and it would require the focus groups to become a thing again.
Yes, but how does that mean you'd need a new focus group for every single new thing? Because I don't necessarily know everything about everything in the game. So if it's in a section of the game, a mechanical area of the game that I have no clue about, I should not be included in that conversation whatsoever. And it would also mean that we need a lot of NDAs and all over the place.
I don't think you need NDAs because it would basically only if they had to release and disclose very sensitive information. And they don't necessarily need to do that to have a casual talk with players.
They definitely do.
No.
You're in the weeds. You're in the weeds. Get out of the weeds.
The point is that if nothing has actually been decided internally yet, and then you could basically get the red team feedback before you even start coding, right? So you're not talking about a feature that's ready where you've done all the procedural stuff and connected all the gears. You're basically asking about what shape should gears even be. It's exactly what we did with structures. Citadel focus group was exactly this. Nothing had really been started when we're talking about code. They had the visual assets pretty much ready, but everything else was basically done by asking the players. So when we need to transition this from POS, what needs to actually be there? What features should be priority? How are we going to do it? The only thing that was decided from CCP before they even brought it up with the focus group was the designs and the fact that they were going to be more like ships and ship fittings than traditional modular stuff. That's the only thing that was decided. Everything else was open and discussed in the focus group. And it was 80% successful.
I
80% successful.
I still think it would be a very dangerous dance if you're not going to go into the level of saying you need NDAs on everyone. Because imagine, let's just say, hypothetically, we're discussing.
Well, that's just not. It's just not that interesting to talk about NDAs and whether people need to be quiet.
I get that, but it kind of leads to why it's a dangerous thing at the same time as I would like for that to be. I want the CSM to effectively be a group of specialists that have their own opinion on certain things.
No, that you're just making CSM. You're just making. If you say that, if you just want specialists that know the mechanics, that know how they're going to be exploited, all you're doing is putting another layer of quality control on the stuff that's imagined. And that just seems like a whole different service.
That's not what I mean. I'm not saying that they need to be, specialists and in reacting to whatever CCP can bring to us. What I mean is that the CSM needs to be the relay between the specialists. And,
that's true.
but the problem is that they can't really, because if CCP goes to the CSM list, so they go to their specialist, hey, Mr. Specialist number 1, what the hell do I say now? Because I'm under an NDA, I can't tell him anything. You know what I mean?
But do the oversight and actually be part of the focus group stuff, which is with the experts. Also, both to secure good communications and also to kind of make it safe for CCP, because if it comes through a CSM member, it's not necessarily official yet. So CSM members could ask questions, again, back to I'm going to ask a theoretical question. If we did something like remove fatigue, what would actually happen, right? So stuff like that. When you have that conversation in a focus group on how can you improve this and fix a potential problem in the game, CCP doesn't need to be too directly involved. They just need to actually get the information.
But that's kind of what I said. But okay. Okay.
Well, I understood it as the opposite, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. The idea that the whole CSM is all a twisted concept anyway, of electing players to represent the player base. I
personally think that there should be a hard limit to avoid the whole brigading of votes and whatnot. I think there should be you should be, for instance, the simplest approach, IP lock. You can only vote once from an IP.
But that brings a lot of questionable problems, right? And it also with the whole VPN thing. What it really
then simultaneous with IP, you'd also do emails.
Well, the easiest solution is to tie it to subscriptions.
I'm not
6 months.
I'm not saying it's not possible to game, and it potentially would be to an extent. But imagine how freaking frustrating it would be. But you could even go as far, because CCP logs your computer.
But if you play one of them,
well then instead you do the hardware logging, because when you open the Eve client, CCP actually logs your hardware IDs, and that's very, very unique to you. That means you can't, you'd have to go through VPN and so on to dodge that, right? Or not VPN, what's it called? Virtual machines. Instantly banned by CCP. People
that's gone because
they've embraced it. Actually,
because some of the services that are being offered now needs that to be allowed, right? So this is the future.
Because of freaking GeForce experience.
The GeForce
is a horrible idea, but that's a different story.
Well, no, it makes
the solution is to make it only subs and only 6 months or more subs. Anyone else will not be able to.
Not a horrible idea.
That's not going to put a limiting factor on anything, really, because shit. How many people don't have SP farms that have been going on for the past 3 years?
But they're not subscribed. They're not subscriptions.
They are.
No, they're paid with Plex. They're paid with Plex.
So you mean only money subscribing?
Yeah, because it benefits CCP.
That's also kind of a dumb thing, though.
Well, it's not. It's a valid thing.
They should only be allowed to vote.
Well, they should be interested in the voter base that pays.
All right, let's actually break this up. Let's hold on. Enough about this. We're just going to go on forever. Let's talk about the GeForce thing. I think is an interesting topic, right? Because let's explain what that does. I'll see if I can explain it. But essentially, if you have an older machine that can't handle the graphics requirements to a game, the game is streamed to you. Now, you buy it on your own, so you have to pay for the game. But the server, the GeForce server, will stream you the game, so your computer doesn't do the heavy lifting. Your internet connection does the heavy lifting. And that allows people who are on Macintosh to play the same PC games that people play and enjoy on PC, so it's able to play.
It's the future of gaming, really. It is going to pick up a lot more once we are past this early phase of testing it out, because it's just a scaling thing. It's just a waste of money and assets to keep buying these massive gamer rigs instead of just outsourcing it to someone that has a massive server farm.
Right. Now, here's the problem, though. You're shifting. Here's a couple of drawbacks. One is you're shifting the importance of having good equipment over to having good internet. So money's moving from PC makers to bandwidth holders, right? That's
ISPs.
Yeah, but
ISPs, yeah.
That's really a factor already. I think the important aspect is if you think about what the expenses are on the hardware, on something like the graphics card, and most gamers buy them every 2 years on average, I think, right? If you then take and divide that out to how much these gamers are actually a complete waste of money and a complete waste of hardware that could be done and distributed a lot better.
Entirely true.
I imagine it's like going from buying a record to buying a cassette tape to buying a CD to buying an online download. And at that point, you're medium free. Like you don't have to.
I think now you're mixing software and hardware.
Can I jump in now and tell you how it's going to break everything?
yeah. I was gonna lead
do
up
that.
to
Do that. That's good.
But it's hold on. But it's a licensing. You're buying a license to play a thing. It's like TV. TV has gone that way too. But go ahead. Tell us why this is going to break games.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to tell you how it's going to break a lot of games. I'm going to tell you how it's going to break EVE Online, because currently, IDs and so on and so forth. Normally, people would use things like VPNs and virtual machines to try and circumvent that. However, it is a more and more frustrating task to do when you have to continuously do it, because every time you get banned, you have to get a new IP or a new virtual machine, and whenever at some point that there's only so many IPs on a what's it called, VPN service provider, and eventually they all get banned, right? So what we're doing right now with the whole GeForce experience and people being allowed to use their services is the risk of, if CCP does start banning GeForce experience IPs or server nodes, they can't do that. They just that whole power on CCP's ability to fight bots disappears, because they can't just go and ban some part of a server cluster from NVIDIA. Because if they do that, then eventually the entire cluster is going to be banned, and then it doesn't really matter what you're doing, right?
Well, that's where you are partly right, but you're also a bit wrong, because it suddenly goes into the hands of collaborations between their security team and the GeForce Experience team, right?
So that means that because GeForce Experience has explicitly stated in public,
are they going to give to, say, their service providers? So someone like a game developer that is basically being used and is selling a lot of services for GeForce Experience, right? If GeForce is dependent on those clients and those customers, they will also be interested in doing a collaboration with actually sharing some of the data, or at least being willing to put in some security effort to actually get rid of the bots. They would actually potentially be a part to get rid of the horrible ones to keep the legal ones.
And who do you think is going to win a lawsuit between CCP and NVIDIA?
Well, if NVIDIA...
Pretty sure that NVIDIA would,
that's not about size. This is not about size.
Oh, sure it is.
Because this is a provable loss of profit for the person that's being botted against. This is very easy in a court case. So no, you're not right. This is not going to be a size thing, because then you would have a class action thing where 10 developers just go together and just go up and show all the numbers and the potential damage that has been done by GeForce. And this is a very easy win. And GeForce will basically go bankrupt on that.
So GeForce, do you guys like it or not like it? I'm trying to get a read on chat.
I think it's amazing, but
I can totally see the benefits of it for a lot of people. I totally can see the benefit for a various amount of things. I still think that it's never going to be the same as, playing on your own PC. First of all, because there's always a certain level of lag. So I would never play a high intensive FPS game on a service that I know is completely internet connection reliant. But I can totally see the benefit for general users, that if you can't afford buying a brand new PC or high end PC to play AAA games, then I can totally see the benefit. Sure, of course.
Yeah, we're talking about the GeForce service and if it's appropriate for EVE Online or will it encourage botting, and we're talking about the service in general, and and we're asking if people think it's a good idea or a bad.
Now that you essentially we're making all of these gamers or not completely reliant on the service provider, like 100%. And you got to
block
remember
you,
that,
right? They can say, "Hey, you know what? You've been playing too long. You got to go to bed."
it could be whatever. It could be that I mean, let's go completely bananas on the scenario here.
Yeah.
Let's say that
this game is satanic. You can't play it anymore.
No, but let's say that that NVIDIA as a corporation has a political side, and you're a person, because I mean all that data is available, social media and whatnot. You are outspoken against that party for whatever reason, and for some, and let's say that if this party doesn't get a majority in the House and in the states this term, then what's it called? There will be a lot of taxation on NVIDIA. So NVIDIA obviously doesn't want that. They could now go and say, you're banned from our service for whatever reason, which they can, because we don't want you as a Democrat, for instance, whatever, to play on our service.
Your local city has an ordinance that say you can't play Conan. It has scantily clad women, and we don't like that because we're a conservative
PC.
area, let's say.
Or PC.
And then this allows you to stream out past your municipality and attach to a game where nobody knows what you're buying at the store.
Wow,
so it doesn't matter.
Your connection is dying. You would not be able to use the GeForce Experience service without it.
Maybe these are all just fictional. Yeah, these.
Sorry.
256 colors. That would be your limit, Marrow.
All right. Yeah, I guess I'm.
What's that?
The service.
Cable. What's the one that does all those old classic games? The service that sells all those old games.
I can't.
Is it GOG or something like that?
I can't.
Where you can get pretty much every 90s game.
Old indie games.
It's amazing.
That's
Matterall can play that.
Matterall can use. You can't use it for anything else.
Yeah, Tomb Raider 1, Matterall. That's your limit.
Pretty much. Yikes.
But no, everything is going towards distributed computing stuff, right? Distributed computing and cloud services, because it's just more efficient.
Yeah,
I can totally see that it's more powerful. I just think that it takes away the power of the individual, just like many other things in the world that we're experiencing today.
Oh yeah. But that's where the fringe groups are going to come up with the alternatives and the gray areas of shit, right? This has been the back and forth battle pretty much since the beginning of computers. I also think we're going to get a proper push on, well, the whole distributed ISP stuff is going to start launching. What did they call it? Internet 2.0, because a lot of the gray hats have been working on that for now. 10 years, right? Well, okay, let's call them white hats, but they're gray hats on.
Until you start lagging, then the connection just cuts.
Oh,
I can't save your game.
Never mind, you just lost the connection again. Bye-bye. Oh, God.
Did I really?
Nah, you you stuttered, so it was like, maybe.
Yeah.
It was decided.
I'm switching back and forth between cellular.
Your landline. Oh, boy!
See, you should just give in and let Huawei come and give you some high quality mobile
buddy.
coverage.
Huawei.
Huawei.
Sounds much better.
Oh, I coined a great meme today, by the way, Cable. I think you might actually appreciate it. You know the term dog whistling?
Yeah.
What Donald Trump has been doing lately is dog trumpeting. It's not even a whistle anymore.
Wow. I still wish from our conversation yesterday, Matterall, that the media would go like, nope, we don't want to waste time on this guy anymore. Bye-bye. And see what he does. I still want that so bad.
Well, seeing as Matterall's suffering some minor issues, I think we've been going for about 2.5 hours at this point. Any final comments before we let it go, so that Matterall can go and fix his internet?
Can I answer? Can I react to something that's being said in chat?
Go on, just one.
Okay. Crazy Smurf is saying that you can't install random software like botting software on GeForce Go. No, that is true, but you can install it on your own computer and then forward the commands to the GeForce service, which is very simple. And that was it.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the massive raid from Ron. When Matterall finds the raid button, he's going to push that button.
You mean when he actually finds that?
He's still here, but if he tries to talk, I think everything sets on fire.
Lovely.
Who's
streaming this? You or him?
I am. I had to take over.
That makes a lot more sense.
Who's on the available to raid list? B.
3 tiers. 3 tiers.
Who's 3 tiers?
He is a small ganger from Unspoken Alliance. Currently roaming around in. Where is he? He is in Fountain.
Well, that sounds reasonable. Fountain sounds like an interesting place to be right now.
Exactly.
Go for that one, Matterall, if you can find the button.
Believe in you.
Yeah, I found it. Got it.